Alright everyone, welcome back, and hopefully this episode will seal up the last of the heavy metal construction on this duster that we've been at for several months now. The big chore up here is the top of the frame rail, the basically flat piece of sheet metal that's like 14 gauge that runs down through the top of it, and it had some rotted areas, thin areas from too much pitting and water and all this stuff, and it was right between the shock tower, strut tower, however you want to address that part there. And so we had to cut the old shock towers off, clear the area, clear the metal, treat the inside of the frame rail as much as we could. So we've got some new shock towers. They came off of a 75. They're actually better. Watch that last video and see why. And they're going to go on. We got to replace the metal, but we have metal on the way. I can't find 14 gauge around here locally, so I had to order it. It's on its way. But in the meantime, we're going to start getting into fixing our inner fenders, our aprons that are unibody structure. They go from here to here, and same on that side. Okay, they're, like I said, in pretty good shape. They just have kind of a typical rust thing going on here, and I went ahead and cut a couple sections out. A little piece here, which is very, very small, almost an equivalent size right here, just a little longer. And then we have a piece here that I've had to fabricate because it has some bends, all that sort of stuff. And that's what this piece is right here. I cut it from an old trunk lid that I have laying around, and we de-rusted it. And I already pre-built it, really. It actually goes this way here. I put the little notches in the bottom of it, and it will fit right there. All right, so we'll have to use this as a template again to cut it back off, or cut the old piece out, and then we'll puzzle piece this one right back in here. Then we'll make these other two pieces, which are really just little pieces of strap, and then this will be solid. It'll be 100% again. We have to do the same thing on the other side. All right, so we got this bad boy here, and I'm going to turn it to where you're looking at the wheel side of it. And if you can see here, there's these little notches, or little up and downs. I just simply mimicked the ones that were on here. Not really that important, just a little picky little thing if you're really into restoring it the right way. We have a bend that comes up, and then we have this one that kind of gets into that area and bends out. So it looks kind of difficult in a way because of the way it drops down both ways, but it's really not. You get you something like this vise here and put it up to where you need it to stop, and then you bend it there, take your hammer, beat everything else back. It's really simple to make one of these. Okay, so what I need to do, I know this will be kind of hard to hold here, but we'll give it a try. That bump out I just showed you, that's what this is right here, and then that overall kick over is right across here. So this will set right here. Now, the reason I came over a little further was because where this thing kind of cuts in and away from the frame rail, it goes over the little fence on the frame rail. That's what this little notch is here. So I've really just brought up to make a new edge of it, so it'll be whole there. Okay, set it back right there. That's what we want. Okay, when we cut the old one out, we can kind of finagle it with some pliers to make it all fit perfectly. We want it to be flush and right back in there, look like it's never been repaired. You can put a clamp on it if you have to. Not really needed here. I have a fine tip Sharpie pen. There's the new. Pretty good replica. A little bit of tweaking, it'll be right where it needs to. So we'll just leave that around just in case we need to kind of reference something that doesn't make sense. And this guy will go right in there. Looks like we can get away with minimal trimming. And it fits up pretty good. We might need to open the gap up just a little bit. And you can see the bend, how it it's sharper than our bend that we made, but we can go back and work this a little bit to match that. Everything else though is actually like dead on. It's pretty good. And this is the correct notch and then we'll have to build this piece. And then where's that other one? I think up there. So this will be a pretty simple one once you get this one out of the way. All right, now what we're looking at here is the other side. It's the passenger side inner fender, and it looks awful janky right now because of all the dried up acid that had been running off of it from when you would dip it one end and flip it over and all that would run down it, and, you know. But we have all the rust off of the areas that we really wanted to get it off of. And so we have a couple little repair spots on this one. It's a little different than the other side, but not terribly. Primary thing that's the same is right over here. We have that bit of rust right there, and I'll hold this up. And you can see it right here. All right. Now the cool thing is about that, make sure we're on the camera here, is this area right here that it is inside of is flat. We just really need to cut a shape, and that'll be good there. We don't have to bend it because it's not on the bends like the other piece. Now another area I want to fix, because they had some really gnarly spot welds on it, is right here. I'm just going to cut this corner off to about here and just make a nice new rectangular piece. We're going to weld it in. We'll drill a couple holes to make for plug welds, but see, this is just very rough. It won't finish well if you try to put it back in the car this way. And this is the same issue kind of on the other one, but it's a little worse right here. This is where the little brace piece that goes to the cowl was up against this, and it got dirt and salt and whatever inside of there. So I'm going to cut this piece from about here up, and I'll probably just go ahead and make the bend. I'll make a new bend. We'll just duplicate probably an inch in from the edge here and have a new piece. Weld it in, and then these will be a-okay, both sides. Now the first of the templates and the piece I'm going to cut will be off of this corner here. And I'm also, I'm looking at the back of this. There's a little bit of this heavier rust right here. So I want to compensate and just go ahead and cut that off here. Okay, here's my piece of template, I should say. And I'm going to lay it over top of this. I have it flush with the edge here. And then it should come around flush with this right here. This is this corner. This corner's good, that corner's good. It's really just this piece from about here in is bad. Okay, because if you look in the back side, see that? You're making up that difference. You can kind of see where the piece comes up. And the only one I had a question on was, where does this little kick up, where does that happen? Because it's gone. So really, I just referenced the other one. And if you look, where is it? Right here. We have to replace this piece. It's just a little square, but this is, you can see it starts to kick right here. So right at the bend, maybe even above the bend. Okay, so I simply transferred that situation right here. So when we reset this, and if you notice, I also have a little bit of a black around it. I made up the difference. See, I'm going to cut up against that tape line, right? Well, that blade, or our cutting wheel, is about that thick. So that'll help us be a little bit more accurate, especially if you're in a really important area. This not so much, but if you're a really important area, that will mean the world. Okay, so we have that gap there, we have the gap here, around to there, and I have just this little kickoff to go into the bend here. That's why I did that little thing there. Here is our template. And be cognizant of things like this little half moon cut that was naturally there, but we need to really, this is the big area that's causing us kind of a disruption. It won't look good if we just weld it back in, because there'll be a big jagged edge. So lay that on top, cut within the perimeters we needed, did our tape line with the little gap around it. So we just need to cut this off, transfer this to our piece of metal, cut that out, dry fit it, make sure all the perimeters come up and everything looks like it's gonna fly well, and then we'll be good on that one. And although we're not rotted down here, it's just easier to go ahead and just clip this piece out. So there's the rot, and we're going around it well enough to get into the good metal. So we'll just slice this out, and it's, like I said, it is flat. So we just really have to make a brand new flat piece. Makes it much easier that way. And then when we cut this out, put it in and fit it, it should fit right in there and it'll weld right up. And once you buzz everything down, it shouldn't be no big deal. We'll have to get the welder fired up. Here's our new piece. It's, like I said, it's flat. Here's what we got. Trimmed it out a little bit so you have a nice little bit of a gap. You don't want it tied up against it. The weld can't get down in there as easy. So if you leave just a little bit of a gap where it can just kind of bobble around in there just a hair, then you'll be good. That's how that will set there. We got this piece here. Go down there. And then this other one will go up top. All right. So I'm gonna get the... All right, so welding is in order. We've got this piece tacked on, we have this piece tacked on, and we got that one tacked on. Again, just make sure everything's straight, get you an assortment of clamps if need be. A situation like this where you have these little bumps and stuff like that there, you probably don't want to put it on there that way. You want to flip it around this way because of the flat side and the way it's going to turn your piece when you go to clamp it down. All right, everybody, we have our 14 gauge out of the little box. Here's some of the original style stock, basically the U-channel, and I kept it as a reference. And if I hold it up against there, a nice uncut area like that there, it squares up with it really good. I know you can't really see it there, but it's dead on to that. I took basically some printer paper, taped it together to get their length, and we used that little piece as our bend calculation. Show us where it needs to go. And it's in the vicinity, very rough vicinity of 2 inches. Okay, so if that sits down in there, it's pretty consistent down through there. It does widen out there, but the way I cut it. But let's not get too technical on that. We're really just wanting to make a solid channel down through here. It needs to lay level, and it needs to have the lip that comes up right flush with all of this up here. There's high points, and that's where it needs to sit. You'll see a little bit here, which it will show. That's fine. We just want it to be at the top of everything else that's on a high on this overall U-channel. Okay. Right around here, it starts to kind of kick down. We're not going to worry about that yet. We really, again, want to make the basic U-channel. We want to make this, but this long. Okay. And what I did, I took a couple of measurements inside here, compared it with this, and then drew it out on the paper. All right. So if I take these little clamp clips out of here, it's just a rectangular piece. The overall width on this thing, if you flatten it out, comes out to 3 5/8. The channel, the sides, they come down just under 3/4 of an inch. All right. Measure the other side. It's right at 3/4 of an inch. With this is our template. All right, so some progress. Half hour later, after we started this, and with that slow, methodic way of what we're doing here with very, very, very minimal tools, this is what we've come up with. Not precisely straight, but that is right in the ballpark. It was much more bowed, and it's going to do that when you're bending these sections at a time. What I had to do was lay it flat after I got it, the perimeters right. And we took some blocks, did a little bit of that. We also hiked it up on a ramp like deal there, and the higher spots of this bowing, put it there and hit it. All right, and you have to give it some pretty good force. And we managed to get it pretty straight, okay? It's right there where it needs to be. It was also a little torqued from one end compared to the other. This, for instance, this was kind of over here. So I put it in the vise, just the lip of it in here. Got it nice and tight. I took this big pipe wrench, put it around here, and was able to correct it. Almost dead on. This is probably a 1/64 of an inch wider. And it's a lot easier to get it wider than it is to get narrower. So that's why you really have to favor going too narrow on it, because otherwise you'll be in trouble. Now this will need to be trimmed and cut away so it'll fit these kind of slashed out sections here. But it does have a beginning to seat. Mostly what's holding out is this piece, part of that. And what I have here is the paper that I used earlier to make that, cut it out, I have it bent and it's kind of set down in there. I pulled it out after making a mark over where all the edges are, and I've set it back down in there, and we have a nice little description of what we need to do. So if we pull this back out, it has some odd cuts, and that's just relation of all this here. So we know we can take our new piece and fashion this in there, and then I would probably do it this way instead of trying to cut it all at once. I would work on one end first. So I would set this down in here, make our marks, make sure it's all nice and square, nice and plumb, not crooked. And we're gonna make a mark and basically cut this end off to that spec. Then we will take it, set it inside of there, and make sure it's looking good. And then we can relate this to it, make sure it's all agreeing with each other. Make sure they're on the same page, okay? Okay, so we have our piece shape roughed in. Like I said, I started off this side first and only, and proceeded to, you know, push it around in there, trim off a little here and there. And when I felt good about that, I pulled it out, lined it back up, made a couple of rough marks just to kind of give me an idea where things need to stop and begin and all this stuff. Got my template, wrapped it around the back of it. I didn't go on the inside. I thought, well, let's go on the outside of it. It gives you a little bit more to have to trim, but I'd rather do that than take off too much. And did the same thing down here. Work this end down. Now I think this is going to have to lip down a little bit because it's pretty flat till about here. Then it just starts to kick downward with this frame rail. Okay, so let's take a look at what we got. This thing is about ready. We've got the tabs underneath on the little cages that are underneath this piece inside the frame rail. It kind of helps brace everything, keep it all square from flexing and all that. And you can kind of see I have these holes drilled. Try to do the ovals like the factory did. It's a little difficult, but you can see the shiny bits. That's the top of it. And we have this in here. I'm going to bring this up a little bit, but we see we have a pretty good fit otherwise. This will all have to kind of set down a little bit more, and then they all kind of sandwich together.
Now is a great time to like and subscribe.
Okay, so this is welded in. The whole channel is in. I have it butt welded up here to the piece here, the top plate here, and the top plate here. Also have it plug welded. We just need to clean these welds up, both sides. I was wanting to show you when I welded that in, but I was having some problems with the battery on our camera, so this is the camera's fault. Okay, here's where we put our holes, and this is where it's spot welded or plug welded to those little braces on the inside of the frame rail where I put the new tab on, right? So it's welded there, so that gives a little extra strength. All right, now here we're on the other side, and we're actually using the same piece, the template, and you see it's even still cut. But this piece over here on this side's significantly shorter, but we can still use it for the channel dimensions here. We're gonna drop it down in there and do it just like we done on that side. We're gonna make sure we encompass the ends inside of this. And I'm gonna do my rub right there, make sure we find the edges of it. Try to keep the bottom as flat as possible so you get more accurate reading. Like that. And I just press it down, and if you got dirty fingers, it really helps highlight the edges of the metal here. And make sure it's straight. We hold it there if we need to, so it doesn't skew. And we find right there, make sure our corners, where our line is here, is down in the corner. Hold it, and then we just rub that one down. And try to figure out, okay, right here. And just find our break-off points for all this. Like this piece of the fencing, I guess you could say the upright, stops here at an angle. So we want to be sure we kind of squeeze that. It leaves that mark, and there we have it. So it might be a little tough to see. I think you can kind of see the impression that I made. So I'm going to take my black Sharpie pen and highlight that, highlight this. what we're confident that is good to cut, we'll cut, and if we're not sure about maybe from here to here, we'll leave it open, and then we'll recheck here, and it looks like it just where the bottom piece goes in. So you can see, got some bending time in on this guy right here, and the holes, like earlier, we make those so we can mount it to this with a plug weld. Same thing here. I had to weld this tab on because the old one broke off. It was a similar situation as the other side where one of those tabs broke off. So just a simple little piece of 16 gauge steel, about a 1/2 inch wide by about 1 3/4 inches long, roughly. Will do the trick and just flatten it over, okay? So what we need to do there is align it with the, there we go. It kind of aligns it with the bottom here so it's not cockeyed or anything. That way the new piece will set right on top of that. And again, as long as those are in spec, all you really have to do, your goal is to get this to set flush down on top of it. Now, it's gonna be a little bit of a squeeze in here. Look at that. It's gonna be a little bit of a squeeze in here. So it should be trimmed up pretty good. We might have to pop it back out. But what I'll go ahead and do is we'll try to shoehorn this into place. Probably with the way this lip comes around and the way it is here, I'll probably have to kind of under like that. So let's see, right there. So we'll start there. Let me get the hammer and I'll just try to beat it into place. And I'm kind of putting pressure on it with the glove that way. Take a look at it. It's almost sitting on the top of that under piece there. It's pretty much on top of it there, but we're still up. Now this is where it starts to take, where this notch is right here, that's where it starts to go downhill a little bit. So it's not gonna look like it fits in there really good, but we can help it like that. Probably have to trim a little bit off of this side right here, but overall we have a pretty good fit there. It fits up really good here, and once we start really welding it in here and here, when it's all said and done, then we can use a little bit of the heat penetration. It's going to be soaking through here and line a lot of this up with that so that they're nice and sandwich flat. Most of it just needs to come back out because it's a little too far in. Same thing there. So I'm going to make a couple marks probably here. We're gonna pry this thing out, test fit it until we're happy with it. And then when we get it out and our cuts are the way we want them to look, we'll have to get this guy out. And we'll have to spray our Eastwood inside of here. We're gonna have to kind of wipe it down, blow it out real quick. Use the Eastwood encapsulator inside of there, put some weld through primer up on this edge, where the little fence is. We're gonna put it on this piece also, this here, here, and here, and then we'll be ready to go. That way when we go to do it later and put the tube up in there and spray it around, it'll already have the areas covered for the most part, but it'll add a double protection, getting all the little crevices and stuff like that that we may have scratched off by jamming that down in there, just kind of thinking full circle with it. All right, so what we got here, let me turn a little light on for you. Actually, I had to put a weld over here because that piece was actually not connected to it at all. So we've drastically improved that part of it, and just I didn't drill a hole or anything, just been a lot of trouble. So I just went and welded it straight to the frame. The gray is our rust encapsulator, Eastwood, and then the copper is some of the weld through primer. Okay. Now, I do have a different brand. I've used a couple different versions of that. The first one was a 3M Weld Through 2. It was zinc. And then I used the U-Pole copper. And I found a good deal on this. And I saw some people say this is the best one. So far it sprays good. I don't know how well they actually work. It does look like there's more metallic in it with the copper. It's called IES, Industrial and Professional Use Only. So it's copper weld through primer. We got 2 cans of this for $32. and goes on really good. That's that. I did the top of these, the sides, both sides. I had like 2 coats of this, in and out. So we're ready to put it in. It needs to go in this way. Like I did earlier, I have to kind of, because of this, kind of shoehorn it in. So we'll start there first. Pretty good there. And then we'll just kind of hold it in this way. Keep our glove out of it from getting pinched in there. Good there. Just help kind of move it in as you go. There's a little spot here where it kind of notched in. That's good. Now we're right on top of it here. When I started, it was on top. Now it's lifted. So I think the best thing we can do, make sure it's established there. It's actually very flush here. So I'm going to go ahead and tack a few spots here. It's going to fit great once we get it all worked in. We just don't want this to raise up off of those tabs, and that's going to throw up the whole geometry of the shock tower. And we don't want to do that. We want it to be down where it needs to be. You want it to get down inside of there, not just on the top. You want to get down inside and penetrate both pieces. I'm going to go ahead and do this one here. Now remember how I talked about this being kicked up earlier? We're going to have to work that down, that bend. About flush, right there. Alright, so I've been spending a lot of time being extremely meticulous with both of these shock towers, trying to get them aligned properly. And I have this bar in here. It's a straight piece of stock steel. And just to let you know, because I thought this at first, but then I realized it's way off actually. I thought, if you look at this, the plane of this frame rail and how it kicks down, I thought, oh, these must be parallel. The flat edge of this and that must be parallel, but when you start to measure, you realize this actually is higher here and goes down, and this goes, so they'd actually come to a point. So they are not completely parallel. So before you line up anything like that, if you have all this off, don't do that, okay? What I do have here is a piece of our parts car from over a year ago, our 72 Duster parts car, and I have highlighted the points on our shock towers here. And we've done it here as well. I took the control arm off, and using basically the center of the holes, I've put a line in the dead center of each hole. So here, all 4 here, gotcha, and over there, same thing. I've done it here as well, and then I use this tape to highlight the very, very bottom, the absolute flat piece under here. Same thing here. All right. I proceeded to take some measurements, and let me grab the tape, measure, and show you the angles I'm using here. I also use the ruler for this just to have a double measurement, since you have kind of that little slop on here. But if you go up square against that and not crooked, you know, you want to be 90-degree angle off of that line, straight down alongside this bracket here, you should come out to 4 7/8. All right, so I bring that up there, 4 7/8. All right, get as close to it as you can so you get as accurate as you can. Over here, I'm gonna rely on this side of the tape measure next to this bracket. It comes out to 5 inches. So if I put it right up next to that, the 5 inches falls right here, the very bottom of the framework, right up against this. Okay, so we got 5 inches there, and I have these marked right here. So there's a 4 7/8 down alongside there. It even works on this side too because it's very square right there, and it only really works there on this one. So we have those two, 4 7/8 here, 5 inches here. Now over here it's a little more difficult, but we can run it down the side of this one here. And what we have, I'd like to put it in here like this to get as close as we can. See, we've squared it across that plane there. And down here we have 5 15/16. So that's basically from here to right about here. Okay, and that's the bottom flat edge. Over here on this one, should have 6 15/16. All right, and that's to kind of the inner edge of the left side of this tape measure. Not the right side, not over here, but over here. Okay, so that line straight down, I put this line here, 6 15/16. And then when you start squaring some of this up, there it is. And then down here you get that 4 7/8. You could, if you really needed to, you can go from this one to this one only, because that's the overall length. And then once I got this all squared up where it needs to go, I carefully put tape right up around these areas here to show where it goes. Same thing here. So those tabs, when they're lined up there, that's giving our measurements that we want. I did the exact same measurements on this side as well. Okay, it's all lined up there now. I've taped around these tabs. And the only other thing I noticed that you really want to look at is, if you notice our oval shape here, you don't want it way far back, you don't want it way far forward. It actually has a slight tilt, very, very slight tilt, like this. Okay, I'm exaggerating it, but if you kind of square it up there, that's where it sets. Okay, same thing over here, which is a little bit of a tilt that way. So they kind of tilt inward just a hair. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pop these shock towers back off. I'm going to prep everything, wipe it down with the wax and grease remover, and I'm going to just check for any areas that might need some help. Like if there's a little bit of rust, we're going to buzz it out, and we're going to put our copper weld-through primer on it, and then we're going to get it back on there inside of these perimeters that we taped off. We're going to measure it again just to be sure. We don't rely completely on tape. We want to put it back in there and get the orientation fore and aft, side by side, up and down, get all that back in where it is right now, and then we'll be ready to weld. So just in case you're wondering, I put weld-through primer on this for any areas that are going to be hidden, and it's on going to be fresh weld. I put some Eastwood rust encapsulator underneath where the tabs are going to set. Okay, and I put it on the back side here, and then this got some overspray from the copper weld-through primer. All right, so when we put the piece down on here, this area will be protected, as well on the shock tower itself. We'll get it lined up, measure it off, get it where we need it, pull the tape off, and then we can weld around that. All right, that should help keep some in there. We can also put the weld-through primer on top of this as well. It's not going to hurt. And same thing there. We did the same thing over there. So we just got to prep up the shock towers to actually, all the contact areas are going to have the weld-through primer, because they are de-rusted. They have no rust on them, so we just need to really cover them in copper primer. Now our shock towers are back on. They've been adjusted to the spot they need to be on. We measured this one here. We measured that one on the end. They matched up to our previous measurements. I proceeded to put a clamp on this one, which could cause some fluctuation. But when I did, I checked it again, put this clamp on, and then checked that one again. And once I had them both on there, I proceeded to double check again, so they weren't moving around. So we have our 6 and 15/16 from this center mark, right along this bump stop, the very bottom of the frame rail. And we have our 5 and 7/8 from this center line, straight down, 90 degree off of this plateau right here. So I'm going to do some tack welds. I have our gas on, we're turned all the way up on our voltage, and we have some decent speed there. So just going to get some tacks on there so we can anchor it. We can tack it from the back side when we do establish that, and pretty much do the exact same thing on the other side. And then we can weld it as per what the car needs to have. So if you need to weld it here and here, here and here, then go ahead. I'm going to weld all the way down, across, and up. Same thing here. And then we're going to have to start welding all the other points on the inside of the frame rail, this whole back section here, and in about 3 or 4 places, little stitch welds on the back side. Alright, so you'll see here, I'm going to start putting the inner fender back in the car on the driver's side. It's all prepped up and ready to go. You can see here we have just our Eastwood rust encapsulator, the silver, and then the copper color is the copper weld through primer. And really, with this being the original one on the car, all the sheet metal flanges around the perimeter, on the flange near the firewall, the one up near the radiator yoke, those should have the same drill marks as the holes that are in the apron in the inner fender. The only place they will be different is in our new strut tower or shock tower, however you like to address that. They will be different because they was on a different car and they was located kind of scattered on there, so they're not going to line up there. But everything else, you can line it right back up to where it was, and you can either pin it down with some screws, or if you got a skillful hand, you can go ahead and start tacking some welds, and then eventually you'll just plug weld them. Now that the inner fender is in, I went ahead and plug welded all the way down here on the back side of the frame rail, spots here, and then the other side of the frame rail where the strut tower is. Okay, it really leaves one spot on this side that it needs to complete this part of the job, and that's this little piece here. This came off of our parts car from a year ago. It's a 72 Duster, and it's been de-rusted. It's in really good shape, but we do need to prep it, so I'm going to just sand it down lightly. It's been etched, so that's going to pretty much cover it, and then we'll put some weld through primer on any edge, like here where it meets with that, all through here where it meets with that, and the same thing here. So we'll want to clean all this up, and then when we do put it in, we'll make it nice and flush down here, here, along this edge, into here, where you can see the old bead weld was that we had to cut off the old one. And it really is just like, it's a glove-like fit right there. So we'll get that in there, we'll clamp it in good, and then we can start on the other side, get that knocked out. And like I said, you just line it all up. And since we are running long in this video, we're gonna go ahead and end it here. This will be the end of the major construction. We will complete a few things off camera. There's this rust spot down here on the frame rail. It's just 14 gauge. If you've been watching us make patch panels at all, you'll see how that's done. It's pretty cut and dry. So I guess we'll just end it here. So thanks for coming to the Hoosier Garage. Stay tuned for much, much more as we're gonna start getting into the grinding all this extra off of this car and start building it like a normal car. So thanks for coming.